Hey, my name is Joseph Musse. I'm a 51-year-old man who has 3 kids, a wife that I've been with together now for a little over 38 years. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an artist, I'm an author, and one thing for sure that I am is that I'm passionate. I'm glad that I was asked to do this mini kind of interview, kind of just to give a little bit more insight about who I am and why in the world I even exist, and why you're watching this video, if it even matters to you. My life isn't any better or worse than anybody else's. We all live in this world together, and sometimes what we believe the problem is only happening to us, we later on see that many people have gone through or go through or are going through the same things, the same trials and tribulations that we all do. It's just that at some point in time, you might have a boatload of issues, problems that you went through, maybe in your early age that you didn't necessarily go through in your older age, and vice versa. The timeline is different for everybody. And the main thing is that in this world that we live in, again, this is my opinion, I should preface. I believe that we're all born with a purpose, with a mission in life. And that's what kind of gives us that motivation to continue day in and day out, day in and day out. I mentioned this many times. I mentioned it in a couple of my other videos that, it's not like we were born to have a job. We were born to do our work, and our work is something that never dies. It's something that continues with us until the day we die. And I believe that, you will finish your work before that time comes. Now, with regards to a jobs you can have here, you can have there. They're in your life one day, and one day they're not. And it's not something that's a sense of stability. It's something that you go to. It's your job. And don't get me wrong, you might have a very good job, and that might sustain you, or at least other aspects of your life with regards to finances, but that's still not your work. I believe that you can even do your work in your job. And no matter what business I own, no matter what it is that I'm doing, whether I'm drawing a piece of art, whether I'm working out, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm creating something 3D, an animation, or chopping up a video on an edit, my passion for it and the story that I'm trying to tell in any one of those different outputs or outlets are really indicative of who I am, and pretty much kind of giving everybody a flavor, if you will, a taste of my purpose, of my mission, and which is quite different than the job functions that they are. They are my work. Now, I believe that everybody can learn and grow and do and be pretty much anything that they decide to. And quite frankly, if you are where you are today, you pretty much have decided that. Now, of course, there are external forces that are beyond us that really push us sometimes, or pull us in a certain direction, and poke and prod, and can disrupt our lives. And that's going to be true for everybody. That's going to be true for entrepreneurs, for athletes, for actors, for doctors, for anybody really. And what I would implore us to a better way to think is that they're not necessarily a problem so that they can hold us back. They're a problem so that we can kind of solve and then hopefully move and grow past forward towards something greater. And not everybody's going to look at it that way, but if you look at the fight business, for example, you have your battles, your wins and your losses, and ultimately, everybody wants that championship belt. And you're not just going to get the championship belt. You have your battles that you have to kind of go through in that process. And what the world deems as losses, a real warrior or a person of purpose is going to look at that as, okay, I didn't lose. I went in there and I competed at a level that I wasn't able to perform for whatever reason. It could have been something that was physical. It could have been something that was mental, psychological, emotional, spiritual, even financial. Whatever that was that the world deemed as a loss, you can look at it in a different perspective and say, that was a gain for me. So I think the better language is not to say wins and losses, but what are the gains? What are the gains that you have acquired in your life? If you're listening to this video, you're old enough to know and cognizant enough to know the things that you have gone through and what are some of the gains that you have received, what makes you you today. Those are the things that you want to kind of hone and harness, and you want to like shape and mold and put them in a place that's focused on one direction. And that in that respect, really nothing is a loss, because you're gaining all the time. You're learning, you're applying, and wisdom is something that you have to unfortunately go through to be wise enough to know not to go through it again. And an even smarter person would know that, wow, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you're wise enough to know that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take from what has already been learned and done and pushed out there in the world, and you can take that and go, okay, I've seen that people who touch fire get burned. I see that people who go in the ocean without any apparatus to survive drown. These are things that you see, and therefore I can gain wisdom through other people. And you're only wise if you actually apply it. My purpose in life is to try to impact and affect as many people as I possibly can, profoundly and in a good way, to help them reach their purpose, or at least see their purpose. Because that's one thing. If you're blind to your purpose, you won't know how to align yourself towards that purpose. So my mission in life is to make sure that the people who I come in contact with, people who are happy, people who are sad, people who are hurting, people who don't necessarily know where they're at, people who are lost, my mission is, and this is where I feel like I've been divinely knighted for this job, if you will, this work, this position that I have, and that is to go out into the world and help people who are hurting. Now, that is a very, very, very large task, but fortunately, we live in a digital world where, maybe a word or two that I say or have said in the future, or in the past, or will say in the future, can easily be forwarded off as a digital video to somebody and possibly help somebody on the other side of the world. So this is something that, while it's a big task, it is something that is possible. I was asked, why did I even want to take on this task? And the operative word there is want. I don't believe that I ever wanted to take on this task. It's there's such a huge void in this life that we all look at, and we try to figure out, how is that going to be filled? How is that void going to be filled? And you start to see that there are not too many people that step up to the plate. And so it's not a matter of want, it's a matter of necessity. You should. And in that process of knowing that there is a void that needs to be filled in this world. And just conversely speaking, we live in a very, very, very hostile and hurting world. And the two kind of go hand in hand. People become hostile when they're hurting. And unfortunately, though there are many other emotions, there are many other ways to survive in this world. But unfortunately, those are the two base ones that, kind of feed each other symbiotically, hand in hand. And we want to try to help people who are hurting so that this way we can avoid a lot of catastrophic events that can happen both on a personal level and a global level. Because we, as individuals, have to try as best as we could to reap what we sow. And now we reap what we sow all the time. It's just sometimes it comes in forms that, wasn't the way we planned it to be. But you most certainly reap what you sow. If what you're sowing is hatred and anger and bitterness, believe you me, that will sow and manifest itself in a million different ways. And it'll only continue to exacerbate who you are as a person. At some point, you have to get off of that cycle, boom, just pop off. And then realize that, wouldn't it be better if you were the solution? That if you get off of that vicious cycle and you become the person that you would love to see the world be, if you become that person, that's one of you. But if you affect another person, that's two of you. You've automatically already doubled. And the hope is that that would exponentially continue to grow, and that everybody would want to be the type of person and live that life that they would hope to see in other people in this world. Now, that excludes any type of preconceived notions you may have about the world, about the universe, any philosophical ideas. That excludes that. But what it does is, in a very human way, at the core, viscerally, we know that we understand each other because love transcends everything. And in that is how we're trying to help change the world. And when I say change the world, again, you have to first change your world. If you haven't gotten that, you have to change your world. Your world is you. This world that we live in is you, this organism. And when you change your world, you'll be able to hopefully affect other people's worlds, and then ultimately permeate where other people like this world and other people like their world, and so on and so forth. And then we can live a world, in peace and unison. Now that's super duper, pie in the sky type of thinking. And it is an arduous task. It is definitely a task that is not made for the weak. But, if you're a leader, you would definitely call to be a change in this world. And the difference is you're going to be a change. It's not just necessarily making a change. The making a change is a byproduct of being the change. And I want you to remember that, because that's very important that you understand that those two are separate. Okay. Lastly, I'm glad that I was able to sit down here with you guys and talk a little bit about myself. A lot of the times people misconstrue what I do, what I say, how I am, how I comport myself as being some sort of, goody two-shoes, self-righteous, individual. And that could be the furthest thing from the truth. I am super duper flawed, just like everybody on this planet. The only difference, perhaps, would be that I understand that. And I also understand that by being flawed just like everybody else, there aren't too many people that are gonna come up and pick up those fragmented pieces and sweep them and make them whole again. There just aren't too many people out there who care enough, because they have their own lives to live. So we have to be the ones that kind of pick up our own pieces and then retransform into something new, better, different, in order to be an example that it can be done, so that other people can see that it can be done. So no, I'm not a goody two-shoes. No, I'm not this goody boy. No, I'm none of those things. I'm trying to be as authentic as I can to my creator, because at the end of the day, I know that I have only one real boss to answer to, and that is the creator who created me for his creation to go out into the world and then be somebody that can hopefully be the beginning of that change that we were all created for. So at the end of the day, if I do come across as this goody two-shoes and all this other good stuff, believe me, I have tons of flaws. Believe me, ask my wife and kids. I'm here really to serve my creator. Pretty much I realize and recognize that without that, what is life? I know that just like any other thing that has purpose because it was created. And it was created because the creator endowed it with that purpose. That's why it was created. And so I know that I have greater purpose, and that's why I was created. And therefore, it would be the worst thing in life to do is to not pay homage and give glory to the one who created you, and then live that life as best as you can so that others can see it and then hopefully live it as a blueprint for themselves. Well, I know I spoke a lot about a lot of things, and the truth of the matter is that's what interviews do, right? You sit down and you get to know a couple of people. But I will want to just summarize and conclude by saying that, you know, there have been a lot of people that I've met in my life who have impacted my life. And actually everybody, let me just reframe that by everybody that I've met has impacted my life in one way, shape, or another. You know, there are people who don't want to be helped, don't want to be bothered, don't want to be changed, and don't want to be involved with anything that has to do other than living the world that they're used to. And that's absolutely okay. The beginning of my mission years ago, I was so on fire and zealous with trying to help people see their purpose the way I see my purpose. And I learned very quickly that, you know, people can become very hostile, and maybe not necessarily always physically, but at least mentally, spiritually hostile towards that. So I learned to refrain from that and just back up and back off of people who do not want me in their life or a person like me in their life. And that is a very important thing, because a lot of people say what they want. And I think it's just as important, and maybe sometimes as important, to know what you don't want. And I know that I don't want to ruffle any feathers and impact people's lives negatively indirectly because of how they feel towards me. So it's best that I sever any ties with people who are not like-minded, the same energy or same vibration, same frequency, because it's just better before you get tainted. And so I learned, let people do what they're going to do, worry about yourself, and like I said, continue to grow and better yourself in every way possible. I'm talking about there's a zillion ways to learn and grow and be a stronger, better version of you, just even tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And so that's what you should focus on. And then the people who are on the same wavelength will automatically mesh, and it'll happen. And then just quite frankly, there are people who don't like that and vehemently want to squelch you because your energy is too high. And you want to just avoid those type of people until they get to a point in their life, hopefully, that they're able to see things from a different perspective and understand their value in life, and then will come to their senses and say, wow, I have a renewed mind. And I remember way back when Joseph was here, that he used to try to put me on that same wavelength, and I was just too ignorant or totally on a different wavelength than he was to see it. And now, by saying that, people with low vibration get hurt and say, well, there he is. There's that self-righteous guy again. He's saying that he's on a higher frequency and we're on a lower frequency. And here's the truth of the matter, that if you believe that I'm talking about you and that you believe that you're the one on the lower frequency and I'm on the higher frequency, well, then there's your answer. Then that says more about you than it says about me. So I appreciate the time that you guys spent, a little insight into who I am, my life. I have so much more that I would love to say, but before we wrap up, I will say that if it wasn't for my Creator in empowering me and putting someone like my wife in my life, things could have been tremendously different. My wife is a key component to my life. She's integral, and there is a scripture that says that two become one. And just so you know, it's not that I all of a sudden become 50% and she becomes 50%, but that I, a whole 100, and she, a whole 100, come together and we become double the power, but nonetheless, we become one.